Dorris.
All right, thank you. You can proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Doris, what do you do for a living?
I clean houses.
Did you have the opportunity to clean the house of Miss Dottie in Decatur County, Tennessee?
Yes, sir.
Miss Dottie was the owner of Dottie's BP and Marine.
Yes, sir.
Let me take you back to April 13, 2011, the day Holly Bobo was taken. You remember that day?
Yes.
What were you doing that day?
I was cleaning Miss Dottie's house.
And was Mr. Victor Dinsmore there?
Yes, sir.
What time did you arrive that morning?
Probably between 8 and 9.
Mr. Dinsmore, was he there before you got there?
I'm not quite sure which one of us got there first.
Was he there that morning with you?
Oh, yes.
And how long were you at Miss Dottie's house?
Till about 5 that afternoon.
Mr. Dinsmore there until that afternoon?
Yes, sir.
Did some people visit that afternoon?
Yes.
Tell the jury what happened that afternoon.
Okay, it was probably between 2:30 and 3:30. I was headed to the laundry room, and she has 2 sliding glass doors. And I seen images, so I kind of backed up and looked, and I seen 3 guys by a pickup truck talking to Victor.
And where were they, these 3 guys in the pickup, where were they talking to Victor?
Out in the front, in the driveway at Dottie's, that would be behind the house.
The driveway comes up around the side of the house toward the back.
Yes, sir.
Victor was in the back talking with these 3.
What time did you say?
Between 2:30 and 3:30.
Between 2:30 and 3?
Yeah, what I can remember.
Okay, I didn't quite understand you. I heard you say it.
You saw only 3 people in addition to Mr. Dinsmore in the back.
Yes, sir.
Do you know who one of those 3 people was?
Yes, sir.
Who was one of those 3 people?
Jason Osprey.
How do you know who Jason Autry is?
Actually, I know his mother.
So you knew who Mr. Autry was?
Yeah,
How tall was Mr. Autry?
tall.
Tall. Do you know what they were talking about?
I have no idea.
Did you see any other activity in the back?
No, sir.
Pass witness, right?
Bro,
Hello, Ms. Doris. My name is Jennifer Thompson. Debbie, I'm sorry, Dottie, Miss Dottie, everyone's referring to her as Miss Dottie, but her name is Dottie Cooley, isn't that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And this day that you were there with Victor Dinsmore, you had not met Victor Dinsmore before that day, had you?
No, I hadn't.
Okay. And you didn't know him before?
No.
And so, how is it that have you met him since, or seen him since?
I've seen him maybe a couple of times, and that's it.
What other times have you seen him?
There was one time my husband used to work at the Shell gas station at the interstate. I was there, and he come in and got gas then, and that was probably it. We actually worked 2 days together at Dottie's.
Okay. No further questions.
no.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Ms. Doris, you may be excused, or if you wish to join us in the courtroom, you may do so.
Thank you.
You're free to go, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next.
Mike Frizell.
Frizell
Frizell
with an F.
with an F.
Okay. I'm gonna have you spell it anyway.
Absolutely. There's some Z's and there's some L's.
Raise your right hand, sir. Solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do, sir.
Be seated, state your first and last name, and spell it for the benefit of the court reporter.
My first name is Michael, Michael. Last name is Frizell, Frizzell.
How do you proceed?
Before I start questioning, Your Honor, I'm going to make an announcement to the court and to the jury with the consent of the defense. There will be stipulations entered later in this trial with regard to the authenticity of records that Agent Frizell is going to testify about. We've done that, both sides, to speed this up. There's also going to be provided...
Say stipulations be provided the other way.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Both of their records, our records. Also, even to speed it up faster, there's going to be a list provided to the jury of telephone numbers with the people whose telephones that belongs to, provided to the jury later as well. Individuals that Mr. Frizell testified about today, but other individuals that the defense may be interested in later. We've done all that, try to speed, both sides have done all that, try to speed everything up.
I really appreciate it, and as the attorneys are aware, I've tried to encourage where we could, and I really appreciate that.
We're here to talk today about phone numbers and a bunch of stuff like that, Agent Frizell, is that right?
Yes, sir.
It's Saturday, none of us want to be here, all right? We've been in this trial for a week, but some of this stuff may be dry, is that right?
Yes, sir.
We're going to work and get through it, okay?
Okay.
Jury had an opportunity to coffee up this morning.
Oh, good, good.
Of course, that might bring up another issue. We might have to take a break at some time. If you do, just let me know, okay?
Agent, can you tell us who you are, what you do?
I'm an assistant special agent in charge with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, part of our technical services unit. I'm also assigned to the FBI as a task force officer and on the child sexual exploitation task force. And I am a member of the CAST team, which is a cellular analysis survey team for the FBI.
And to do those things in particular, or part of those duties include looking at call detail records, and that is records produced regarding telephone.
That's correct, yes.
To do that, have you had special training, special education?
I have. It's CAST training is about a 5.5-week program, and that consists of a 2-day basic course. If you pass that, you get invited to a 1-week advanced course. It's very intense, long, and then if you pass that, you get invited to a 4-week certification course. And that consists of being trained, looking at records, and engineers from each major cell phone provider comes in and teaches us things.
Your Honor, if it would speed things up, we're willing to stipulate that he's an expert in the area of cellular telephone tracking.
Let the record show
Yes,
reflect.
sir. In fact, you've testified as an expert with regard to historical call detail records many times in the past.
Yes, sir, I have.
You've looked at these things many times in the past.
That's correct.
Have you prepared a report for us today?
Yes,
Does that report include analysis of certain phone numbers that we asked you to look at
it does, yes.
for certain time periods?
That's correct, yes.
Would that report aid in your testimony here today?
Yes, it would.
Your Honor, I would offer that as evidence this time, the state's next number exhibit.
The exhibit 208.
That's this report right here?
This one. Okay, let me show it to Ms. Thompson. Sure.
That's fine.
I can see.
Your Honor, I have extra copies if you'd like to have one to go along with.
I'd love to.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
We've got got this, I'm going to publish this as we go, Judge, via this projector and a PowerPoint. The PowerPoint's the same as the report.
All right, he said he showed you the lights. We get a new person every day. Kill that and then kill that row.
All right, obviously this is just the cover page of the report, is that right?
That's correct.
We've got 3 telephone numbers there, is that correct?
It is.
That will be the light level. You're still going to be able to see your report.
Oh, yes, sir, I can see it
Okay.
fine. Thank you.
And would you agree to me, we're going to talk a lot about these 3 numbers as we go through this report.
Yes, we are.
The top number being the number that belongs to Zach Adams.
That's correct.
The second number being the number that belongs to Jason Autry.
That's correct.
And the third number being the number that belongs to the victim, Holly Bobo.
That is correct.
Yes. Yeah, yes. You've got the advancer.
I have it.
Oh, you go.
I can operate it for you, or you can have it.
No, you're better than me.
Okay, you just tell me which one you want to go
I tried to
to.
use an easel, it was bad.
Sure, you just tell me which page you want, and I'll get us
All
there.
right, so let's go with one. All right, this provides background, what was asked for, and need you to explain what kind of records we're looking at, and what we're doing with them, and stuff like that, Agent.
Well, phone records, these are all ATT phone records, all 3 of these numbers. And so they'll come in a certain format you can see on a slide to come that explains how to read those records. And once we get there, it'd be easier for me to show.
Go ahead.
Okay. So here, on page 4. So this is an example. So the first column to the left is the date. The second column is the connection time that call was made or received. Then the seizure time, so what that is the ring time when the person hits the send button on the phone when they make a call. So that's the ring time. And then you see the originating number, that's who placed the call. Terminating number, that's who received the call. The duration is in seconds, minutes and seconds. In this case, you'll see the top one's 16:0:16, so that's 16 seconds. And you see the next one down, 3:39, that's 3 minutes and 39 seconds. And then you see the calling party number, that's the person that placed the call. Then there's an IMEI, that's called a International Mobile Equipment Identifier. That's a unique identifier to the actual phone handset itself. Then the next column is called an IMSI, International Mobile Subscriber Identity. That is a number specific to a SIM card that you plug into the phone, so that is specific to a subscriber. So the equipment identifier is the phone itself, SIM card is the subscriber identity. And then there's some transaction type codes here. And then the last column is the cell location. So that's the cell tower that was used. The first number in this top one is 1609. Ma'am, can you hear me okay? The cord's a little short. Let's try it this way. 1609, that identifies what we call a LAC, a location area code. The next number past that is actually the cell ID, the tower number. The first 4 numbers, 3152, is the tower number, and the last number, in this case 2, is the sector that was used. And then AT&T does it backwards. They have longitude, then latitude. That's the location for the tower itself, and then the azimuth of the sector.
You're going to explain to us here in a second the basis of how a cell phone tower works, what it means about these sectors. We're going to hear that in a minute, is that right?
Sure. Yeah.
But with regard to records like this that you get, you got these, you said, from AT&T.
AT&T, yes.
And by these records, I can tell what phone called what other phone.
That's correct.
It records the sender and the receiver.
That's correct.
I can tell how long this call lasted for.
That's correct.
Now, can I tell how long they talked or just how long this call lasted for?
How long it lasted for.
Okay, so if I see, for instance, that 16-second call at the start, that could be 16 seconds worth of talking. Is that right?
That's correct.
Or that could be just 16 seconds of ringing.
No, it's going to be a connection time, so it's connected at this point.
Okay.
So that's 16 seconds of something that went on.
Okay, so that's 16 seconds after the ringing.
That's right.
Okay.
Call's
so
answered.
The ringing is if I go up to the seizure, over to the left is seizure time.
That's correct.
Okay. So for that first call, just if we were going to try to do this first call, there was 27 seconds of ringing. Is that right?
Hit the send button 27 seconds before it's
All
answered.
right. And then there's an answer, and there's some whatever's happened on the phone for 16 seconds.
That's correct.
And you're given information regarding the actual phone that makes this call.
Yes.
And you're given information with regard to the SIM card, I guess, that is responsible for the call, or the account.
Yes, so the phone is the IMEI. So just remember EI, equipment identifier. So equipment being the handset. And then the last one, IMSI, just remember SI, subscriber identity. So that's the SIM card that goes in the actual handset.
And then you're given information about what tower this cell phone utilizes,
That's correct.
and information about, I know we don't know what it is yet, but information about what sector on that tower.
That's correct.
Okay, well, explain for us sectors, towers, trying to use these records to get a general idea about where a phone is at a particular time.
Generally speaking, towers are set up in sectors so the providers can offer more capacity. So there's 360 degrees that they have to cover. So think of a compass, or the clock on the back of the wall is a good example back here. So generally, a sector covers 120 degrees. That's not always the case, but generally speaking, that's the way that so we can get 120s to make 360. So let's take, for example, if you'll look at the clock on the back of the wall. So if I see an azimuth of,
I don't know what that is.
that's, just think of a compass. So compass, 0 to 360 all the way around. So like the clock on the wall, 12 being straight up north. So if I see 0 as the azimuth, that is going to be the center point of that sector. So I'm looking down the center, and I want to go 60 degrees to the left, 60 degrees to the right. 60-60 makes 120. So 12 o'clock being 0, if I wanted to make just from 12 to 4, so each hour hand would represent 30 degrees on a compass. So 1 would be 30 degrees, 2 would be 60, 3 90, 4 120. If I had it set that way, from 12 to 4 would make 120. That'd be sector 1. From 4 to 8 o'clock, be coming on around, that'd be my next 120 sector. That would be sector 2. And then from 8 o'clock back to 12 o'clock is my final 120 sector. That'd be sector 3.
So I think I got it. I'm like a cell phone tower, right? I'm divided into 3, what we're calling sectors. Is that right?
That's right.
And I'm listening, or whatever they call it, sort of like this, out this direction.
That's correct.
And I'm listening like out this direction.
That's correct.
And then I'm listening out like this direction.
That's correct.
So I've got a total listening to the whole circle.
Listen to the whole circle.
Just divided into 3.
That's correct.
So can you use records like this and tower information having to do with what you just explained, the sectors, to get a general idea about where a certain phone is at a particular time?
So when a phone, it has activity on the network, is in a call, receiving a call, text message, some sort of activity on the network, it's going to populate in the call records, the call detail records, which tower was used, in which sector it was used during that event, that communication event. So we can get an idea about which side of that tower was being used, and we can get a general idea of the geographic location the phone is in. We can't give an exact location.
And you said if there's activity?
Must be activity. So, example, this phone is off. This is my phone. But if it were on, it would be in idle mode. So I'm not doing anything with it. It's not going to show anything in a call detail record because it's just in idle mode. And so I have to do something. I have to either make a call, receive a call, initiate a data session, something like that.
So right now, if somebody was trying to figure out where your cell phone is by looking at your records, after today, and your phone's off right there in your pocket right now, there'd be no way of knowing.
No.
Okay. You have to actually be getting a call or placing a call or text or some activity.
Some sort of activity for it to populate in the call record, yes.
Let's explain one more thing for me, and then we're going to get to the meat of things. You said activity. Okay. I place a call, receive a call, send a text, get a text. That counts as activity.
Yes.
Is there also occasions where phone company can ping a phone or somehow create activity or something?
They can try to get a location for a device. It's a common word that's used around. It's called ping. It's a location-based services. So to ping a phone, what they're trying to do at law enforcement, we use it to these things in AMR alerts, fugitive cases and things like that, to try to pin down a tighter location for a phone rather than just based on a sector. Then they try to triangulate. If they can pull information from more than one tower for a device, we get a more accurate location. If they only pull it, are able to get it from one tower, then it's not so accurate. So what we can do then with that information, in of itself, it helps us some. But if we can take that information to get a larger and better picture based on what witnesses have told us in a crime, or say if it's a fugitive, we're looking for somebody, do they live in that area, do they have acquaintances in that area, is there evidence that was found in that area, that gives us a better picture as to what's happening.
All right, so, I want to understand this. We actually have heard a little bit of testimony about this already, but I want to understand this. If AT&T or whoever your provider is pings the phone because we're interested, where is it, somebody's missing or whatever it is, and they ping a phone, does that give me like a spot on this earth where that phone is? Is it like GPS or something?
No, it's not GPS. GPS is satellite based. This is network based, cell tower, ground based things. So they're trying to get, let's say you're a tower and I'm a tower, and the officer over here in the corner is a tower. If it pulls from all three towers based on a device, based on timing, so signal goes out from you, your signal gets to the handset and gets back to you at a certain time. I'm the next tower and it goes out, comes back at a different time. His is the third. It gets us a better location, but it's not an exact location.
Okay, so it's not like AT&T push a button, and for instance, if I was interested in where your phone, and they push a button and tell you, all right, Mike Frizell's phone is in a courthouse right here in Savannah.
With newer technology now, it gets a little better. With technology back in 2011, in that area, not so much.
Instead, from what I understood, is they'll give you a possible area.
They call it confidence level, and so they give us a radius they'll give us a latitude and longitude to plot. Again, that's not GPS. That's just a best guess estimation, and they'll give us a confidence rating, they call it, based in meters, and that's a radius. So we go out the radius from both sides of that point. Now we have our circle, and we can concentrate in that area for what we're looking for.
So ping Mike Frizell's phone in 2011, and there's going to be a big circle of a possible area. It's probably a good idea to start looking.
In this case particularly, yes. The more urban areas, more towers, it gets smaller.
We're going to get into the meat of things, but first I want to just make one thing clear at the start. Okay? At the time of this abduction, all right, when I asked that, let's say 7:30 to a few minutes after 8 o'clock.
Okay.
At the time of this abduction, looking at cell phone records and tower information, do we have any idea where Zach Adams' phone is, where Shane Austin's phone is, where Dylan's Adams' phone is, or where Jason Autry's phone is?
No.
Okay. And why is it that we have no idea at the time of the abduction?
Well, there was nothing reflected in the call detail records for those phone numbers you just mentioned. So didn't see any activity, so there's nothing for us to find there. Now, there's reasons that could be. Either their phones were turned off, just like mine is now, or it was on, but there was just not any calls being placed or received, or it was in a service, in an area that it could not receive service.
So with regards to all the defendants, at the time of the abduction, either their phones are off, they're not having any activity, or they're in areas where they don't get coverage.
That's correct.
You can proceed to slide 8. We'll just go ahead and get to the mailbox. All right. Told you it was going to be maybe a little dry, but we're going to do this, okay?
Okay.
Tell me what we're looking at. What box should we start with? What these symbols, where should we start? And we'll start explaining stuff from the first one.
Well, what this represents is what you've already identified as the victim's phone.
All right, so this is her phone number, Holly Bobo.
731-549-7352. That is correct.
And we're looking for, it looks like we're looking at a period of time.
Period of time from 7:30 a.m. to through 9:06 a.m. on April 13th, 2011.
All right, and where do we start?
Well, let's look at 681 Swan Johnson Road. There's a little pink box
All right.
there, and that's the location of the Bobo residence
Okay.
on this map. So now you see different tower locations.
You want me to?
I was wondering, would it be okay if I step down and point, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll try to speak up in a minute.
And try to make sure the jury has a clear view of what you're pointing.
Yes, sir.
Would
So-
you rather use a laser pointer or?
You know, lasers tend to get bothersome sometimes, I think. So what these represent a tower.
Okay.
Okay. This CID is called a cell ID. That's the tower identification number I talked about earlier. So 1253 is the tower number. This last number 1 is the sector that was used. So based on the information in the call records, I can tell you what that sector, which way it's pointing.
Okay.
So this is what we're looking at. At 7:30 a.m., her phone was using this tower.
Okay.
And the rest of the times down through here, 7:31, 7:40, 8:07, 8:09, 8:10, and 8:11. But if you'll look, at 7:33, tower 1264, sector 1, was used at 7:33. So that's what these call-out boxes represent, the phone calls at particular times. So we go from here at 12531 jumps down to here to the southern tower.
Does that mean that between 7:30 and,
733.
does that mean at 7:33 she had already moved necessarily?
I don't think so in this case, and this is why. Because it goes right back. We see towers being used all through here. There's probably a little area of coverage for this tower this way down here. Sometimes it's not always the closest tower that you use. Sometimes there's a little island of coverage. Most of the time, what a phone wants to do is use the strongest, cleanest signal when it makes a connection. So let me explain something. So like these chandeliers in the court, pretend like those are towers. So if I wanted to read my credentials right now, what I would want to do is use the best light, generally the closest tower. So that way, I can see the other towers. If this is my phone, I can see those, and sometimes I will connect to ones for various reasons just a little further away.
So all these are towers and you're standing right there and you're using your cell phone. You may expect it to be on that tower right there.
I would, if we had lights on, this would be lit. That'd be the one I'd use.
But it could be on this tower right here,
Could be.
and maybe even this one over here.
At times, it could.
Okay. So it's not a hard, if I understand it right, it's not a hard and fast, if I'm standing in a certain place, I'm necessarily going to utilize a certain tower.
That's correct, but most of the time, it's going to be the closest, but not always.
Okay. And so we have Holly, 7:30-ish, at this tower closest to her home. Is that correct, Holly's phone?
This one, and then at 7:53 and 7:59, this tower right in the town of Parsons,
Okay.
it's used. Then from the Parsons Tower, the 12573 is the one in Parsons. This one is in a community called Chesterfield. I'm very familiar with that community. It comes back over to that tower at 8:07, 7:40, 8:09. So after the 8 o'clock hour, it's still using this one. This has got a coverage area up here. Where we start seeing transition take place is at 8:17.
Okay.
So it moves north. He uses a tower several miles north of our house. This tower, 10962, is situated on Shiloh Road, right along Interstate 40, and I'm very familiar with that road as well.
Interstate 40 is north of her house?
Yes.
Okay.
So at 8:17 and again at 8:26, we know that phone used this southern-facing sector for this tower on Shiloh Road.
Okay. And I see another tower over here.
That tower, 31523, is to the east of the Shiloh Tower, and it was used at 9:06 a.m.
Okay.
Well, and all these are inbound calls after, you can see incoming, all these are incoming calls, nothing's going out. The only thing that went out was at 7:42, 7:33.
Okay. So she's not making any calls at this point. She's just, people are trying to call her or text her.
People trying to get contact with that phone, yes.
And at this point, we're up here, you said near the tower on Shiloh Road.
Shiloh Road, yes.
And then this tower here, which, where is this one located?
That's on Tops Road, but basically at the intersection of Highway 641 and Interstate 40.
And we're going to hear a little bit about later this community right here that I'm circling. What is this community?
Yellow Springs.
Yellow Springs. Okay. This is the information, if I'm right, that that you collected and looked at having to do with her towers.
That's correct.
Okay. You proceed to the next slide. Can you proceed to the next slide?
I did.
Oh, you did. I'm slow. We've heard testimony here. Well, let me just ask you: did at some point was AT&T asked to ping this phone?
Yes, the Gator County Sheriff's Office had that done, yes.
And the result of those pings, were that later transmitted to you?
They were.
And tell us what we're looking at now.
So this is what the ping data would look like. So we have the blue dot, the little pin. So right here at 8:57, a location-based services or ping was obtained from AT&T.
Let me interrupt you. I know we want to hear about this, but right here we have what looks like what we saw before, this tower.
It's the same thing, same call.
Okay, so we've put on this chart, would you agree with me? We have the two towers that she utilized between 8:17 and 9:06, the ones that we just looked at.
That's correct.
The ones
The last
near,
one, the 826 actually on Shallow Road.
okay. And the other one here near the Yellow Springs.
That's correct.
So that's the tower stuff that we've already seen.
Yes,
But now these blue dots show something different.
that's the pings.
Okay.
So the confidence rating that talked about earlier, this was 4,448 meters, almost 4,500 meters. That's a rather large radius. So we take that, go out 4,448 meters this direction, 4,448 meters the other direction. Now we have our circle.
Okay, we have our circle, and you can see it here. Is that
This
right?
first circle.
Yeah, this first one.
There's going to be some overlap.
Okay. And from a ping like this, I know that we have this pin here, and I assume in the middle of the circle. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, but could that phone be over here in the circle, over here in the circle, over here in the
Anywhere.
circle? It could be
Anywhere in that
anywhere in that circle. So the ping doesn't tell you any information about where it is within the circle, just here's the circle you should draw.
That's correct.
Okay. And this ping is in what areas does this circle encompass?
That area is just a little bit south of the first one and a little bit east.
Oh, no, the first one. Let's just talk about the first one. What area of Tennessee, what area is that circle drawn in here?
That is along Interstate 40.
Okay, that's what.
I know this tower is right on, not exactly on it, but right at the Henderson County and Carroll County line.
Okay.
So we're in northern Henderson County, southern Carroll County, and right over here somewhere close is Decatur County line.
Okay. And we got Yellow Springs, is that right?
Yes,
And we've got Holiday.
that's right.
Okay.
Which is Benton County.
And so her phone by 8:57 has made it north. And we've got a circle that encompasses a large area. Would you agree with me?
Yes,
To include Yellow Springs and Holiday.
that's correct.
All right, now there's a second ping.
Second one's at 9:02, 5 minutes later, 9:02 a.m.
Okay.
We have a 4,894 meter confidence rate.
Okay.
It's even larger.
And that's this big circle right here.
That's correct.
And again, we have a pin in the middle of the circle, right?
Yes,
But you would agree with me, this phone could be, and if you look at my laser, anywhere in this circle.
yes, but how these two overlap, they are 5 minutes apart. If I were searching, I would concentrate in the darker shaded because these two overlap.
I got you.
I would look in that area first.
And then the next ping is at what time?
9:10 a.m.
All right, and now we have what looks like to be an enormous circle.
7,100 meter confidence rate.
Okay. And again, we have the pin in the middle, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So this phone could be anywhere, is that correct?
That's correct.
Is it any significance to the shared area right here?
Highway 641 goes right basically down this leg of this sector here of that tower, and so that's 641. You can see it coming out here going down toward Parsons.
There's a fourth ping too that we'll look at later.
Yes,
Okay. Were there 4 pings total recovered, or I don't know the technical term, from her phone that morning?
4. Yes, that's it.
Let's go look at another phone. Next slide. Whose phone is this?
This is Mr. Adams' phone.
All right, Mr.
731-733-0191.
Mr. Zach Adams.
Zach Adams, yes.
And you explained before the time Holly was taken, whatever time we want to say, 7:40, 7:50 that morning, Mr. Adams' phone had no activity on it.
That's right.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
What is the first activity on it once we get into the AM hours of 6, 7, 8, 9,
819.
8:19? So this is the first time that morning that this phone is utilized?
After the time you just established. There was
Okay.
some around the midnight hour later, some around the almost 5 a.m. I believe, if I remember right, 4:54 and 4:58 a.m.
Okay, so if I'm Zach Adams' phone has activity on it after midnight, turning into April 13th. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then it also, if I heard you right, has activity on it in the early AM hours at 4:54.
I believe that's right. I will look, but I think that's correct, yes.
But then between 4:54 and through the time of the induction up till 8:19 that morning, it has no activity.
That's correct.
So you can't tell us in that stretch where his phone was.
No, I cannot.
But at 8:19, we start getting some information.
We do.
And is that this box right here?
It is.
And this what his first activity, is that reflected here in this 1819?
819.
Incoming call,
Incoming is actually SMS, short message service. That's a text message.
text message. And you're familiar with this number as Jason Autry's telephone, are you not?
733-2073, yes.
And then to Zach Adams, his number.
Yes.
So at 8:19, this was a text from Jason Autry to Zach Adams. Is that correct?
That is correct.
The next activity on the phone is at what time?
8:30.
8:30. And this is an outgoing text. Is that correct?
It is.
From Zach Adams to Jason Autry.
That is correct.
And there's actually even more communication between Mr. Autry and Mr. Adams shortly following that morning.
There is.
Up to 8:50, is that 3 or my eyes?
8:53. It's a little blurry.
8:53.
Excuse me, 8:55.
8:55. So we have incoming call 8:53. We have outgoing call as Jason Autry. Incoming call Jason Autry to 8:55.
That's correct. And 8:53 is an incoming call from Jason Autry. And I recognize that 901 phone number there to be an ATT voicemail number, so that call went to voicemail.
Okay, so an incoming call from Jason that went to Zach Adams's voicemail.
That's correct.
And then an outgoing call to that number, and then an incoming call from that same number. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. And all that's like 8:53, 8:55 that morning.
That's correct. And I'd like to explain something just a little bit more.
Okay.
So I've labeled these sectors 2 and 3 to make it easier to understand which sector we're talking about. It's broken out. Remember the last number is the sector. So these calls occurred in sector 2. This next block of calls, sector 3. The last block of calls back to sector 2.
Okay. And the fact that it's switching sectors, does that necessarily mean the phone is moving?
It could indicate that.
It could, but does it
It
necessarily?
doesn't necessarily mean that.
Okay, so just like we talked about before, when we were trying to find your phone, and we were saying is it using that light or that light or that light? Because a phone uses sector 2 and then turns around and uses sector 3, that doesn't necessarily mean the phone's mobile.
That's right, it does not.
Okay. So this activity here at 819, you were explaining it was on sector 2?
2.
And what tower is this?
This is the tower located at Cox Road or near the intersection of Highway 641 and Interstate 40.
Okay. And that's what, I know I keep on bringing you back to it, but that's the tower that services the community of Holiday? Is that correct?
Holiday, Yellow Springs.
In Yellow Springs. Okay. Are you, I see a little house here. What is this?
My fault, I should have labeled that. That is the Adams residence.
That's where Zach Adams, that's,
Yes.
and we have Yellow Springs here.
Yes.
Okay. And then at 853, we're utilizing, it looks, a different sector.
That's correct.
But it's that same tower there, Holiday, Yellow Springs.
That's correct.
So between 819 and 853, 855, we're utilizing the same tower, the Holiday, Yellow Springs tower.
That's right.
The phone may or may not be mobile,
May or may not be.
and it's a tower that is close to his house, it appears,
It is.
and close to Yellow Springs.
It is.
After that, what time is that?
858.
Okay, so now we have a different section of time proceeding 8:58 to 9:12. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And where's the phone then?
It's using sector 2 of the same tower.
Okay. So we got Zach's phone between 8:19 and 9:12 using the tower that services Holiday, Yellow Springs.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
All right. So a general idea about where that phone is between 8:19, which is the first activity, and 9:12 is near that tower, Yellow Springs.
That's it.
Okay. But there's something else on this map too. We see these pinpoints. What's that?
Those are the pings we've discussed.
Okay, so we've put Holly's cell phone pings between that same time up here on the same map.
That did.
Okay. And her circle at 857 is right near that same tower that Zach's phone is using.
It's not too far away. That's right.
And that second circle at 912 is even closer to that tower that Zach's using.
It's closer. That's correct.
And when I say, and I misspeak sometimes, and I don't want to create a false impression, okay?
Okay.
If I say where Zach is, I'm actually talking about Zach's telephone. Is that
His
correct?
telephone, I don't know who used the phone during these calls. I don't know where it was specifically.
And then her third ping at 9:10 is this big, huge circle that includes the area here near Yellow Springs.
Yes.
So from April 13th, 2011, between 8 and 19, which is the first time we know about on his phone, and 9:12, his phone is in the same general area as her phone is pinging.
That's correct.
Let's talk about, have you already advanced it?
No, sir.
All right.
Wait on instruction.
Go ahead and advance.
What page is this? I can't see it cut off on this.
This is page 11. And I think, because we got ahead of each other talking, I think basically we're looking at the same thing here. Is that right?
We're looking at basically the same thing. So what this slide depicts is the victim's phone and Zach Adams' phone. Between 8:17, 8:26 call, the victim's phone received, 9:06 call that she received, and then calls we just discussed with Mr. Adams' phone.
Oh, I see the added information. Like you said, the last slide showed Zach Adams's phone's tower activity, is that right?
That's correct.
At the same time, it showed her pings.
That's correct.
Does this slide show Zach Adams's tower activity at the same time as her pings and her tower activity?
It does. So I want to clear up this though. So the pink represents her, the blue represents the tower that he used. And so this sector 3, I don't know what we're going to call this color. It's not pink, it's not blue, it's a combination of those two.
Oh, okay, because I assume pink is for Holly,
Yes.
and so there's this tower that's utilized by Holly's phone,
Yes.
and then there's this tower that's utilized by Holly's
Both
phone,
Holly's and Zach Adams.
and Zach's phone uses both sides of this same tower.
Yes, it does.
So there's actually a blue underneath this pink
It is.
because it's the same side of the tower and everything.
That's right.
All right, let's advance to the next slide. We're looking at a different phone now here, aren't we?
Yes, sir, we are.
Seeing this number. I was going to try to steal that from you while you're
Oh, no, you're not.
What were you gonna try to steal on this?
the water. I'm
Oh, the
thirsty.
water, okay.
Got people water good, we're going to have a problem here.
Whose phone are we looking at here?
This is Mr. Jason Autry's phone.
All right.
It's got 332073.
Did I tell you I want to try to know where Jason Autry's phone was that morning?
You did, yes.
All right. And what's his first activity?
6:50 a.m.
6:50 a.m. Outgoing text message, is that right?
Text message.
And later we will, as stipulated too, later this other number will be recognized as belonging to Angela Scott Smith or Smith Scott. I always mess her name up, but Jason's girlfriend.
Okay.
This tower, where is this tower as far as in Tennessee?
That's up near Camden, Tennessee.
Camden.
Yes.
That is a decent distance north of Holiday, north of all these places that we're talking about.
It is. I've driven that. I've never, I'm going to guess 15 miles, rough.
Okay.
Maybe a little less, maybe a little more.
And it's actually not a, if you take back roads and stuff, not a unpretty drive. It goes through nature preserves and stuff like that. Is that right?
I don't know about the preserve, but yes, it's a rural area. Yes.
So it's 6:50, outgoing text, and Mr. Autry's phone is up here in Camden. Is that right?
That is correct.
And we've put an address on here. Go ahead.
310 Minko Hills Road, Camden, Tennessee.
And we've heard that's the home of Angela Scott.
Okay.
So this tower that's in that area.
It is. It's nearby.
And we're on the, we're giving the sector a name too?
Sector 2, but that's pointing south
Okay.
in this case.
And would that be consistent with Mr. Autry being in the area south of Benko Hills?
It would.
Could it also be consistent though, because I know we're talking about general stuff.
Yes.
Could it also be consistent with Mr. Autry's phone being in the area north of Benko Hills?
Maybe. There could be what's called backflows. So the energy emitted on that sector would go toward the south, but it's not a pretty pie wedge. I want to make that clear. It's going to be, I don't know how to describe it, I'll use a technical word and call it a blob. It's going to be kind of skewed and funny. Backflow, there could be some of that tower that would go to the backside of that. I would expect it to use the other sector, but it didn't in this case, if he were at that house at that time.
Okay. So the fact that he's using this sector, you would expect him not to be using that sector if at 6:50 he was sitting inside Benko Hills.
That's right, I'd expect him to use the other sector.
And in fact, at 6:51, which is shortly after that, is that correct?
That's right, 1 minute.
We see him on this other tower.
That's right. So that tells me that Most likely, that phone is in between those two towers.
Okay, so in the area between these two towers below, south of Camden and her house.
That's correct.
After 6:51, is it fair to say we have no activity on Mr. Autry's phone until 8:19?
That's right.
So like we said at the very start, at the time of her abduction, we can't tell where Zach Adams' phone is, correct?
That's correct.
We can't tell where Mr. Jason Autry's phone is.
That's correct.
And we can't tell where Shane Austin's phone is.
That's correct.
And we can't tell where Dylan Adams' phone is.
That's correct.
They may have no activity, or they may be off.
That's correct.
Or somewhere where they're not receiving a signal.
That's correct.
This next activity we have on Mr. Autry's phone, and we've actually already looked at this on Zach's, is communication with Zach's phone.
That's
Is
right.
that correct?
That's correct.
At the time that phone is communicating with Zach's phone, what tower is Jason Autry using?
He's using the tower at Cox Road near Highway 641 and Interstate 40.
All right, well, is this the same tower we've been looking at quite a few times when we looked at Zach's phone and we looked at Holly's?
It is.
This is the tower near Yellow Springs and Holiday.
That's correct.
So by 8:19 through I can't read that time.
8:55.
8:55, Jason Autry's phone is on the same tower as Zach Adams' phone.
Yes.
And, as we've seen from the previous slide, Holly Bobo's phone.
Yes. Hers didn't use this one until 9:06.
906.
Yes.
He uses the one, we got ping information before 906.
We did, yes.
Okay. So it's the same tower as these circles that we've seen drawn all around this tower.
Yes.
You can proceed to the next slide. You have, all right. This is Jason's phone, right?
It is, yes.
Now, what are we showing here?
This is activity from 9:42 a.m. through approximately 10:48 a.m.
Okay, so later on that morning, right?
On that morning.
Next activity at 9:42 a.m. through 10:48. What towers are we using now?
At 9:42, Mr. Autry's phone utilized the tower right over here. This is at the Birdsong exit at Interstate 40,
By
right
the,
before the Tennessee River.
by the Tennessee River.
Yes.
So we were using one well west by Holiday and Yellow Springs.
Yes,
And now we're way out to this tower
to the east.
to the east and by the river.
That's correct.
Does that give you a general idea about where his phone is?
Well, we can see at 9:42 that I've labeled this sector U Sector 7 at 9:42. And then nothing until 10:35. He uses the other side of the tower, Sector 9, pointing back toward the west.
And could that be consistent with the phone moving from this area or being in this area and the next time it's used being in this area?
Well, in this case, yes,
Okay.
because we see 10:35, 10:36, it's on Sector 9, and then at 10:39, 3 minutes later, it's using the Cox Road Tower, 641 and I-40, just 3 minutes later. So it's somewhere in between the two. That indicates to me that the phone most likely was moving.
Go to the next slide. And we got this out of order. This is just something we talked about real quick. Zach Adams had activity on his phone early that morning, is that right?
Yes, started Started earlier, but I began my analysis around 4:54 a.m., so 4:54, 4:58.
Okay. And at that time, he was using that tower by his house?
That's correct.
You can proceed to the next one. All right. Now we want to know about Zach Adams's phone. And basically those times that we just looked at for Mr. Autry. Okay? So we start here at what time?
This is at 9:10 through approximately 10:37
All right.
a.m.
And I've had you highlight any times that there was communication between what phones are we looking at?
This is 733-6373.
And whose phone is that?
Shane Austin's.
All right, so when we see yellow, and we'll see this as we go, but as we see yellow, that's communication between Zach Adams' phone and Shane Austin's phone.
That's correct.
All right, 9:10, 9:12. Those are the first two as far as activity. Is that correct? Not.
They're this time frame, yes.
Okay. And we're utilizing this tower I recognize now near Yellow Springs and Holiday. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then if we skip to the next in time, we're at 9:50. Is that right?
We're at 9:50, Sector 7 of the Birdsong Tower at the Birdsong exit
Oh.
by
all
the
right.
Tennessee River.
So now we have Zach's phone in the area by that tower that we saw Mr. Autry's by the Tennessee River
That's correct.
at 9:50.
That's correct.
And then we see activity after that, 10:01, 10:03, 10:04, 10:06, 10:06, 10:06, 10:06, 10:10. This is Zach's phone and Shane Austin's phone.
It is.
10:12, all the way through 10:19. Again, we have Zach's phone and Shane Austin's phone.
That's correct.
9:20, same.
10:20.
I'm sorry, 10:20. We go all the way through 10:37. Is that correct?
Yes.
So
That's
the-
correct. Let me look on the
Yes, sir.
paper copy. That's a little blurry.
Yes, sir.
In 32.
10:32. Okay. So 9:50, 10:32. And if we do jump ahead to these here, 35, 36, 36, and 37, we're all at this tower, Birdsong Tower by the river.
On Sector 9, 1035 through 1037.
And I know that we switched sectors, but
Yes.
we started, the first time we saw this phone at 9:50, we were over here on Sector 7 on the Birdsong Tower,
Right.
correct? And the whole time between 9:50 and 10:37, every time we see it, is on the Birdsong Tower, correct?
That's right.
But starting about 10:35, we've switched to this other side of the Birdsong Tower.
That's correct.
Okay. Then we pick up with some numbers over here, 10:38, 10:39, a text with Shane's Austin's phone, through 10:43, a text with Shane Austin's phone, and then 10:49. And by this time, which is 10:38, we're back on a different tower, aren't we?
Yes, we're back to the west on the I-40, 641.
The one we keep on looking at, Yellow Springs Holiday.
Yes, and that's cell ID 3152.
So if you want to read these chronologically, you have to look at the times. You got to go boom, boom, and then find your next time.
That's correct.
You can't just read straight down.
No.
Okay. You can proceed. Now we're taking a look at later on that morning turning into the afternoon. Is that right?
Yes.
Now we're at 11:16 a.m. through 12:18 a.m.
PM.
p.m.
Afternoon.
Absolutely. Where's Mr. Adams' phone?
The Parsons, using the Parsons Tower.
All right.
Let me phrase it this way, it's using the Parsons Tower.
Okay. So in the area here of the Parsons Tower.
Yes.
I'm not from this area, okay? But this Parsons Tower, we've heard some testimony about Joe's video in Parsons. You know where that is?
Not exactly.
Well, address.
But Parsons is not very big.
No, it's not. You know where the gas station right there in the heart of Parsons is?
I do.
Well, right across the street used to be a video store
Okay.
called Joe's Video,
On the Ford dealership side or the other side of the road?
the other side of the road.
Okay, gotcha.
Other side of the road.
All right.
Is that the tower that would service that area?
Yes, it would.
All right, proceed to the next slide. All right, we had previously talked about the fact that there were actually 4 pings on her phone that morning. Is that right?
We did, yes.
Okay. We looked at the first 3. Is that correct?
Yes.
The ones that traveled north and then around that Yellow Springs, Holiday, general area. Is that correct?
That is correct.
But was there also a 4th ping on her phone?
A fourth and final ping, yes.
At what time?
9:25 a.m.
All right, and we have a big circle. Is that right?
Yes,
And her house is in that circle.
it is.
Okay. So is it fair to say that this circle is south and, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes from the circles that we saw before?
Yes, it is south.
Okay. And this ping is at 9:25 a.m., is that correct?
It is.
When we looked before at about that time and the times around that time, good question, isn't it? When we looked at that time and the surrounding time, where were Mr. Autry's phones and where were Zach Adams' phones?
Near the river.
Near the river.
Well, let's put it this way. I don't know where their phones were. I know they were using the tower located at the Birdsong exit right on I-40 next to the Tennessee River.
Okay. So at the same time that she's pinging in this big circle that includes, her house, Zach Adams and Jason Autry's phone is in the general area of the Tennessee River.
Yes.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. At 9:25 a.m., when we have this cell phone ping, where's Dylan Adams' phone?
I don't know.
Why do you not know?
There's no activity.
No activity.
No.
In fact, when we see activity on Dylan Adams' phone, when we finally see that morning activity on Dylan Adams' phone, okay? Assuming that the distance from this area is 10, 15 minutes from Shane Austin's trailer, okay? Would Dylan Adams have time to travel south into this circle and then get back to wherever he was getting back?
Depending on the route, yes.
Because I had you review, did I not, when we next saw activity on Dylan Adams' phone, correct?
Yes, you did.
Okay. And the final slide is a mess, but it's sort of a summary. Is that right?
It's a summary of everything we just talked about.
Okay. And just brief, because we've spent enough time. We have cell phone towers down by her house. Is that right?
We do, that's correct.
That would service the area of her house starting out that morning.
That's correct.
We have tower activity north toward Yellow Springs on her phone.
That's correct.
We start getting her cell phone pings in the Yellow Springs Holiday area, 3 of them,
That's right.
over a period of time. Over that period of time, Zach Adams' phone is utilizing the same tower.
Yes.
Jason Autry's phone by that time is utilizing the same tower.
Yes.
But it started off up near Camden that morning.
It did.
Zach Adams' phone and Jason Autry's phone go out to towards the river, that Birdsong Tower.
It is, and that color doesn't really depict the blue and the light blue.
Is Jason on top of Zach?
I think that's
Is
the
that
case.
the color situation?
Yes.
There's a final cell phone ping from Holly here in
Yes.
this circle that is south.
Yes.
At this time, Dylan Adams' phone is unaccounted for.
That's correct.
And then we finally have our activity from Zach around 11:16 a.m. where he's utilizing the Parsons Tower.
Yes.
You can resume the stand.
Okay, thank you.
Can we approve the sketches for the time being?
Almost the last question.
Okay.
Okay. This final cell phone ping, this circle, okay, and this area here near this Parsons Tower, okay. Are you aware whether or not that was the area in which her phone and SIM card were ultimately recovered?
Yes. That was depicted on the slide previously.
And that's right. We actually had it labeled previously.
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna pass it to this judge.
Let's take a break. Been going 1 hour and 17 minutes. Follow the rules I gave you. 15-minute recess and we'll do cross-examination. All right, Mr. Frizell, finish your direct examination. The defendant attorneys might have some cross-examination.
Yes, sir.
All right.
No questions, Your Honor.
Okay, maybe they don't. You're free to go, sir.
Thank you, sir. Here's the
Is
exhibit.
that the exhibit, all right?
Yes.
Okay, call your next witness. Stay.
Candace Wood. Judge, I apologize. This witness is slightly out of order. We would have called her earlier. She was out of town.
You can call them any order you want, okay?
Just letting you know.
The same thing goes for them. You dictate that.
And then I'm going to ask, someone to step forward and help us change this back over for PowerPoint. Judge. Unless Mr. Ragland knows how to do it.
Right, and ask Agent Walker to do
No S.
No S, okay. Well, I'm gonna have her do it anyway. All right, come on in here. Raise your right hand. Solemnly swear the testimony about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
All right, be seated. I want you to state your name first and last, and spell it for the benefit of the court reporter.
Candace Wood, Candacewood.
May I proceed?
You may.
Ms. Wood, I'm not asking what your address is, but where do you live?
Parsons, Tennessee.
Okay, and did you grow up in that area?
Yes, ma'am.
And sometime prior to 2011, did you become acquainted with, become friends with somebody by the name of Holly Bobo?
Yes, ma'am. I grew up in church with her.
And did you all go to the same church in 2011, or was that even, did that predate that by years and years?
No, ma'am. Before she went to Corinth Baptist Church, she went to Perryville Baptist Church in Perryville, Tennessee.
And because of that, did you know her family as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Both Karen and Dana Bobo and her brother Clint.
Yes, ma'am.
And in 2011, did you have a boyfriend?
Yes, ma'am.
And what was his name?
Justin Lowry.
Okay, and where did Justin work?
He worked at the city of Parsons.
Okay. Can we send someone to check and see the source of that? It really doesn't sound like an alarm.
Your Honor, if I may, I believe that is a car alarm warning the dog team of the vehicles.
Oh, okay.
This is for the canine vehicles.
Okay. Well, tell somebody to turn the air on for that dog, all right? I'm sorry for the disruption.
Okay. So my question was, in 2011, did you have a boyfriend?
Yes.
And his name was Justin Lowry, I believe you said?
Yes, ma'am.
And where did he work?
He worked at the city of Parsons.
Okay, and do you know anybody in particular that he worked with?
He worked with Drew Scott,
And who was Drew Scott?
Holly's boyfriend.
All right, and because of the, I guess, the relationship of, well, was your boyfriend friends with Drew Scott?
Yes.
And as a result of your having known Holly and your boyfriend being friends with Drew, did you guys decide that you were gonna kind of go on a double date somewhere?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and where did the four of you decide you were gonna go?
To the Decatur County Fairgrounds. They had an event.
Okay, and what was the name of the event?
The event is called the World's Largest Benefit Coon Hunt.
Okay, and we've heard about this, the coon hunt. Is that what it's called?
Yes.
Comes there every year?
Every April, every year.
Okay. And so, do you recall the weekend, let me ask you this. Do you remember hearing that Holly had been abducted and was missing?
Yes.
Just before that, just a few days before that.
April 9th.
What happened on April 9th?
From beginning to end.
Well, no. Did you do something in particular the weekend before Holly went missing?
We went to the coon hunt. Yes.
And is that the event that you and Holly and your boyfriends decided to go to?
Yes.
Right? And where did y'all meet up that day?
We began to meet at MAPCO, which is a gas station beside Decatur County General Hospital. Drew went inside to get him something to drink, a Dr. Pepper, I think. And then we proceeded to the Decatur County Fairgrounds.
Okay. And do you remember sort of approximately what time you got to the coon hunt?
It was around 10:30, 11.
Was that a Saturday or Sunday?
It was on a Saturday.
And how long were you guys there?
I'd say about 2 hours.
And did the time you were at the coon hunt include eating lunch?
Yes.
All right, so I'm gonna ask you about things that happened from the time you got there, you said 10 or 10:30,
Yes.
until you ate lunch, okay?
Okay.
Do you remember something odd happening? That
Yes.
you actually make note of something?
Yes.
If you'll direct your answers to the jury and tell them what you remember.
We were meeting at the fairgrounds main building, which is a gray building, and on top of the hill that you go up, it'll be a white building, and it'll say Decatur County Fair. The four of us went into the fairgrounds building. We walked around, saw the trophy, saw some of the dogs, and then we went up the hill to the Decatur County Fair white building. On either side, there are booths going from the front to the back. And there's also vendors on the back of the white building. We entered on the right side of the building, looking at all the booths. Then we went the back of the building, saw all the vendors back there. We came around to the left side of the building. We saw all the booths there. We then went to the front of the building. We noticed that there were local vendors that we knew. Holly was beside me to the right. Justin was in front of me. Drew was beside him.
And what were they looking at in particular?
The local vendors that we knew, they were selling dog collars, dog leashes.
Okay. So were both of the guys looking at the dog leashes and dog collars?
Yes,
And was Holly sort of looking at that with them?
yes.
Okay, and what were you looking at the dog collars and the dog leashes?
At the time, I was not interested in looking at any of the items that they had purchased, so I was people watching.
Okay.
And then we stood there for about 5 or 10 minutes, and all of a sudden I saw in the corner of my eye a man to my left.
Okay. And what did the man look like?
He was in camouflage,
Okay.
I remember, but everybody that came through was in camouflage, but he was the only one standing still.
Okay. Was he Caucasian, African American, Hispanic?
He was Caucasian.
Okay. Could you see what color his hair was?
It had a reddish tint to it.
Right. And was he tall, short, thin, stocky?
He was tall and fat.
Okay. What was this individual doing?
So I was looking in the corner of my eye. I saw him on his cell phone. He had a black flip phone to his left ear, looking down, scooting some dirt in the ground, and looking up at me and Holly. He did that again. He looked down, scooted some dirt, and looked back up.
And when you're saying scooting some dirt, bending over, scooting, what are you talking about?
He was standing straight with his foot out, scooting dirt.
Okay. So you saw him, eyes down, looking at the phone, and then look back where you and Holly were,
Mhm.
and then
Yes.
eyes down on the phone, and look back up.
He was talking on the phone with someone.
Okay. Well, I mean, could you actually hear him talking, or is that what it appeared?
It appeared he was talking to someone,
But you
yes.
couldn't hear from where you were?
No,
How far away was he from you?
about 10 to 20 feet.
Okay. And was that the end of it?
He did that about 5 or 6 times. After, about 5 or 6 times, I felt uncomfortable.
Well, let me ask you this. You said he would look down and look up. Did he look down when you caught his eye? Like, she sees me looking at her and now look down, or was he?
When I was glancing toward his way, he looked down, and then when I looked away, that he was looking up. But I caught him a few times looking up towards us.
All right. And you said that happened 5 or 6 different times?
Yes, ma'am.
Over what period of time?
15, 20 minutes.
And then you indicated you started feeling uncomfortable and y'all left?
Yes.
Okay. Did you tell your boyfriend, Justin? Did you mention it to Holly? Did you say anything to Drew?
I tugged on Justin's sleeve and I said, "Let's go."
Okay. So after tugging on his sleeve and saying, "Let's go," did you tell him, or did you tell Drew, or did you tell Holly?
No.
Did it, other than making you feel uncomfortable, were you at that point concerned for your safety, or did you report it to anybody else?
That day, no.
Truth is, did you just think he was looking at the 2 girls?
In a flirtatious way, yes.
All right. Now, you said a few days later, Holly, you learned that Holly was missing.
Yes.
Okay. And within that next week or two, I'm not going to ask you what she said, but did Karen Bobo reach out to you?
Yes.
Was the purpose of reaching out to you because she knew that the four of you had been at the coon hunt?
Yes.
And again, actually, I'm going to ask you something, not offering for the truth. Did she ask you if you saw or noticed anything unusual at the coon hunt?
Your
Yes.
Honor, I object. You're getting in hearsay.
That, she just stated the purpose before she said it. Your objection's overruled.
Based on that question, did you subsequently report to Karen Bobo and then to law enforcement what you had seen?
Yes.
And at some point in the next few weeks, were you asked to draw a sketch, or excuse me, were you asked to assist somebody, a sketch artist, in drawing a sketch of the individual?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you do that?
Yes, ma'am.
May I approach?
You may.
Have you ever seen that before?
Yes.
And what is that?
The drawing that the sketch artist drew.
And did this appear to be, or I guess accurately reflect the individual that you tried to describe that was watching you and Holly?
Yes.
At the time that you drew this sketch, did you know who the individual was?
No, ma'am.
Did you know his name?
No, ma'am.
Had you seen his picture?
No.
Your Honor, I see Mark is the next numbered exhibit.
209?
Yes, sir.
Put it on the overhead.
All right, let's.
It's not bothering me, but if it's not bothering the jury, we need to fix that. So, at some point in time after you drew the sketch, okay? Did Karen Bobo once again ask to speak with you?
Yes.
And did she show you a photograph?
She did.
Pass forward photograph and ask if you've seen that.
I haven't seen this, Your Honor.
It's in the discovery, but let me bring this over here.
There's a lot of discovery, so let's give her a little look-see. And you folks now know what discovery is, right? You still can't legally practice law despite the fact that I've given you this education, okay?
Do you recognize that picture?
Yes.
How do you recognize that picture?
Karen Bobo showed it to me.
Is there anything else about that picture that is familiar to you?
It was the guy I saw at the coon hunt.
I said, this be marked as the next one.
210.
Together. When you recognize the individual, not the sketch, the photograph of the individual, at that point in time, did you know who that was?
No.
After Karen Bobo showed you the picture, were you again asked to talk to law enforcement
Yes.
about that photograph?
Yes.
And did they present you with a photograph that looked just like the other one?
Yes, ma'am.
And at the time they presented the photograph to you, did they ask you any other information about this, I don't know, the description of the man?
Maybe the height and weight.
Okay. And was that information documented somewhere?
Yes.
Objection if she doesn't know you.
She just said yes.
And where was the information documented that you gave to the police? The law enforcement?
The first time I talked to a TBI agent, he asked me the height and weight.
Objection. Your Honor, to do so.
Asking for the height and weight is not hearsay. It's asking what information she gave in response to that question.
She, in her defense, she wasn't sure what the response was going to be. Go ahead.
Did law enforcement ask you for a description the first time? Or the second time? Or the third time?
Yes.
Did you give them the description?
Yes.
Did you notice where they notated it?
No.
Okay. Do you know who that's a picture of?
Shane Austin.
I have nothing else, Your Honor.
Ross?
Now, Ms. Wood, this, the Coon Hunt Banquet Festival, it was on April the 9th, wasn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
And that was a Saturday, wasn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And on that day, your testimony is you saw somebody standing still. When you say he's rubbing or pushing dirt, do you mean that he's standing there with his foot kind of going back and forth in the dirt, kind of making lines?
Yes, ma'am.
And he appears to be talking on the telephone.
Yes, ma'am.
And he just keeps looking at you and Holly standing there.
Yes, ma'am.
And you say it's 5 or 6 times while he's standing there.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And all the time he's got the phone to his ear, talking on the phone.
Yes, ma'am.
So when you next, when you first talked to law enforcement, it's June 26th of 2011, wasn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
So it's several months later.
Yes.
Okay. And at the time, even though it disturbed you that he was looking at you, you didn't give it any more thought the next day or the day after, did you?
I thought about it every day.
Well, but it's after Holly disappeared that it became significant to you, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. And then that's what's haunted you because you feel guilty about this somehow, don't you? I can see you're emotional.
Let her answer the question.
What do you mean guilty?
Well, I mean, you're emotional about what happened, aren't
Yes.
you? And if you've thought about it every day, perhaps you've thought about what ifs in this situation. Is
Yes.
that right? Okay. So I wasn't trying to imply that you were somehow responsible, but you've thought about what ifs.
Correct.
And so that day you went in and they brought in a professional sketch artist, just like you see on television, and you kind of described as best you could from memory.
Yes.
Okay. And definitely after Holly disappeared, you thought about this a whole lot.
Yes.
Okay. And then shortly after you had drawn the sketch, Karen Bobo was present, but outside the room. Isn't that right?
During the sketch?
She wasn't present during the sketch, but
No.
she was around.
Yes.
Okay. And so you had stepped out, and that's when she showed you a picture of Shane Austin.
What time frame?
Well, you tell me what time frame she showed you the picture of Shane Austin.
It was a few months after,
Okay, a few months after.
maybe
you
a
did the
couple
sketch?
months.
Okay, is it possible that you're confused about that and that she showed you the picture shortly after you had done the sketch?
Yes.
Okay. And so it's after she showed you the picture and told you that was Shane Austin that then you put the two together, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. When you first initially gave the description of the person, you said it was a white male between 5'7" and 6 feet tall
Yes.
and weighed approximately 250 pounds,
Correct.
had glasses.
Yes.
You said he was dressed in camouflage clothing and brown boots.
Yes.
And as you said, at the coon hunt, everybody was dressed in camouflage clothing and
Correct.
because the whole idea is a lot of those people are there to do coon hunting, aren't they?
Correct. Yes.
Plus, it's a style indicator to wear camouflage.
Yes.
You just have to answer out loud for the court reporter.
She did.
Yes.
And I heard her, okay?
I know, she shook her head at first.
Well, she answered, I
Yes.
heard her.
And you gave a description, you said that this encounter with this person occurred between 11:30 and 12 o'clock p.m. on that day.
Yes,
So even though you were at the coon hunt for several hours, this particular encounter was a 30-minute to, well, today even you said maybe perhaps 20 minutes,
yes,
15 to 20 minutes. Somewhere between 11:30 and 12 o'clock hours, is that right?
correct.
No further questions.
Anything else?
No, sir.
All right, thank you very much. You're free to go. You can leave, or if you wish to come back in the courtroom, you may do that, okay? Please don't discuss the testimony that you've given. Call your next.
That's all we have for today, Your Honor.
All right. Finishing up a little early. We're actually ahead of schedule, okay? So we're going to take this hopefully to conclusion within the time frame that I gave you at the outset, if not a little shorter. Once again, all the admonitions I gave you, try as best you can to put this matter out of your mind. Don't make your mind up. Don't form or express any opinion. Certainly no discussion with anyone. You will be allowed to communicate in the presence of an officer, perhaps even visit, but all of that. And I'm sorry about your privacy, but it's going to be done this way. You'll be accommodated because you've got a day and a half. I hope you get some rest. I don't rest very well. I hope you guys do. But I kind of tune in and I don't totally relax, but I hope maybe you can be a little more successful. I've been up since 4 this morning, maybe. And I'm not just saying this is the case. I get keyed up from trying a lawsuit. Like when I used to do acting, you get in character. It's not character, it's real life, but you get involved and it's hard to just. But I'll be watching Tennessee balls this afternoon, so you guys will, so maybe I'll relax a little bit. I wish you the best weekend. All of these activities are purely optional. I'm not going to force somebody to watch Tennessee balls. The little service tomorrow, you don't have to participate in that. I never would put pressure on somebody to do something you're not comfortable with. So you have the right to say no to any of the activities, okay? Any questions? Thank you so much.